Welcome, everybody, to episode 6 of the KingVic podcast. Before we get into anything, go ahead and like the video. Go ahead and subscribe, smash that subscribe button. Go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the upcoming episode. And then if you're listening in the podcast world, leave me a rating and review. 5 stars really helps out. Get me up the charts. I really appreciate. Share the podcast with everybody. Share this video with everybody if you're watching it on YouTube. Now let's get started. So last Friday I talked about Roe v. Wade in a separate episode, not 20 minutes long, but I feel that this topic deserves a lot more than 20 minutes. There's a lot to go over. We're going to start off with basically talking about the beginning of Roe v. Wade when it happened in 1973. We're going to talk about things going on today with Roe v. Wade. We're going to go over some transcripts from the president, the vice president. We've got one of the Senate or House of Representatives, Democrats, AOC. We've got a little transcript from her. I've got a transcript from a doctor. We're just going to go over a lot of this. So today we're going to talk about the women's rights being stripped from them by the Supreme Court and what states have already implemented with bans, basically trigger bans. So like I said, go ahead and smash that like button for this episode. But let's get right into it. January 22nd, 1973, the Supreme Court issued a 7-2 decision in favor of Norma McCorvey, better known as Jane Roe, holding that women in the United States had a fundamental right to choose whether to have abortions without excessive government restriction and striking down Texas abortion bans as unconstitutional. The decision was issued together with a companion case, Doe v. Bolton, which involved a similar challenge to Georgia's abortion laws. For those that don't know, Doe versus Bolton was pretty much the same laws going on where a woman could not get an abortion unless her life was in danger. But that decision was also overturned on the same day that decision to overturn the abortion law of Georgia was released on the same day Roe v. Wade was. So let's go into a little backstory of Roe v. Wade. Norma McCorvey in 1968 became pregnant with her third child. She wanted an abortion but lived in Texas, where abortion was illegal except if it was to save a mother's life. Her attorney, Sarah Weddington, and Linda Coffey filed a lawsuit on her behalf in the U.S. federal court against her local district attorney, Henry Wade. They alleged that Texas abortion laws were unconstitutional. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. District Court for National District of Texas ruled in her favor and declared the relevant Texas abortion statutes unconstitutional. The parties appealed the ruling all the way up to the Supreme Court. So when you say the parties, it means Henry Wade and the local district attorney's office. The Supreme Court's decision held that the Due Process Clause of Amendment 14 to the indicated state's constitution provides a fundamental right to privacy. This protects a pregnant woman's rights to abortion, and also held that the right to abortion is not absolute. It must be balanced against the government's interest in protecting women's health and prenatal life. The court then announced a pregnancy trimester timetable to govern all abortion regulations in the U.S. During the first trimester, governments could not regulate abortion at all, except to require that abortions be performed by a licensed physician. In the second trimester, governments could regulate the abortion procedure, but only for the purpose of protecting maternal health and not for protecting fetal life. After viability, which is the last few weeks of the third trimester, or of the second trimester and the third trimester, abortions can be regulated and even prohibited, but only if the law provided exceptions for abortions necessary to save the life of a mother. So if a mother was going to die because of the fetus, they could abort at that point. And that was the only way they could abort it. They could not abort for any other reason in this. The court also classified the right to abortion as fundamental, which required courts to evaluate challenged abortion laws under the strict scrutiny standard. the most stringent level of judicial review in the U.S.
Welcome to the channel. Sit back, relax, interact.
All right, the decision of Roe v. Wade was among one of the most controversial in U.S. history. Roe was criticized by people within the legal community, including some in support of abortion rights, though thought that Roe reached the correct result but went about it in the wrong way. Others would argue that Roe did not go far enough as it was placed within the framework of civil rights rather than the broader human rights, which I completely agree on. It should have been a human rights thing, not a civil rights thing. Anti-abortion politicians and activists sought for decades to overrule the decision. Obviously, they got their day on June 24th, 2022. However, polls consistently show that majority oppose the overruling of Roe, and to this day, they still oppose the overruling of Roe. The Supreme Court also reaffirmed its central holding in its 1992 decision for Planned Parenthood v. Casey, although Casey ruled that the trimester framework and abandoned the strict scrutiny standard in favor of more malleable undue burden test. So let's summarize Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania v. Robert P. Casey, a Pennsylvania law that requires spousal awareness prior to obtaining an abortion, was invalid under the 14th Amendment because it created an undue burden on a married woman seeking an abortion. Basically, if you were married, you had to get your husband's opinion on it. You had to get his approval, whether you were married, and separated, divorced, or separated. This defines several provisions to the Roe v. Wade decision, including trimester framework in favor of a viability analysis, thereby allowing states to implement abortion restrictions that apply during the first trimester of pregnancy. The court also replaced Roe's required strict scrutiny in the standard of review with the undue burden standard, under which abortion restrictions would be unconstitutional when they were enacted for the purpose or effect of placing a substantial obstacle in the path of a woman seeking abortion of a non-viable fetus. Now we're going to move forward to just last Friday, June 24th, 2022. The Roe v. Wade decision is reversed, and it is no longer in federal hands. The Supreme Court leaves it to the states and its people. It's not with the state, or it's not with the people. It's definitely just with the state. Here is what was said. The Constitution does not confer a right to abortion, and that the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. It's just to the elected representatives. The people have no say in this. The only way the people have a say in this is when midterm elections come up or re-elections come up, if they elect the right people in that aren't anti-abortion. The majority justices wrote, the Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by a constitutional provision. The dissent opinion criticized the majority for doing away with stare decisis and the reason given to justify it. They wrote, either the majority does not really believe in its own reasoning, or it does. All rights that have no history stretching back to the mid-19th century as insecure. Either the mass of the majority's opinion is hypocrisy, or additional constitutional rights are under threat. It's one or the other. I definitely believe that there are other constitutional rights that are going to be under threat. We'll talk about that a little bit. And the majority's opinion of hypocrisy is correct too. So now let's talk about the states and where they stand when it comes to abortion. So right now, as of this recording, I'm recording on July 1st, and this will come out on July 2nd. But as of this recording, these states have outright banned abortion. They classify it as prohibited. and I'm going to give you what's going on with these states too. So right off the bat, we got 4 states that banned with no exceptions for rape or incest. Those are Alabama, Arkansas, Missouri, South Dakota. Kentucky also bans with no exceptions. Planned Parenthood and the ACLU have filed a lawsuit to attempt to block the ban. Oklahoma, the state prohibited abortion at the point of fertilization, so as soon as pregnancy starts, with the exceptions. So they have exceptions for rape and incest. The law relies on civilian enforcement. So the only way you're going to get caught is if your neighbor rats you out. Wisconsin, the state has a law from before Roe that bans nearly all abortions and makes performing them a felony. The Democratic governor and attorney general have said they will not enforce the ban. So that's great that they won't enforce the ban, but local government probably can still. And if you're a doctor performing it, you can be locked up for it still. Louisiana, a court blocked the state's abortion ban, which had gone into effect on June 24th, the same day the Roe v. Wade was overturned. The judge scheduled a July 8th hearing to decide whether to further enjoin enforcement of the ban. Utah, a court temporarily blocked the state's abortion ban, which had gone into effect on June 24th. Now in Texas, the bans go in effect 30 days after the Supreme Court's decision, with no exceptions for rape or incest. Abortion rights supporters have filed a lawsuit to block a pre-Roe ban. A 6-week ban is currently in effect. Idaho had a trigger law banning nearly all abortions, and that takes effect 30 days after the Supreme Court's decision. Planned Parenthood has filed a lawsuit challenging the ban. Mississippi is one of the reasons why this case went up for review, but they have a law banning nearly all abortions, taking effect on July 7th. Though abortion rights supporters have filed a lawsuit to block it, a 15-week ban is now in effect. North Dakota, a trigger law banning nearly all abortions, takes effect 30 days after the Supreme Court decision. Tennessee, a trigger law banning nearly all abortions with no exceptions for rape or incest, takes effect 30 days after the Supreme Court decision. The state attorney general has filed emergency motion to ban abortion in Tennessee immediately. That guy's a dick. I will never be going to Tennessee in my life. Where's next? West Virginia. This is another state I will never go to. West Virginia, voters approved an amendment to the state's constitution that denies any right to an abortion. Lawmakers may use the amendment to enact a total ban. So this is not just lawmakers doing it, it's also voters. Wyoming, trigger law banning nearly all abortions takes effect within days of the Supreme Court's decision. So those are all trigger states. Those all had trigger laws that were going to go into effect as soon as Roe was ever banned, or as soon as Roe was ever overturned. So these states are classified as restricted. They can and they are likely to go into the prohibited, but right now they are restricted. Ohio has a ban after 6 weeks of pregnancy. After a judge allowed an older law to go in effect. South Carolina, abortion is banned after 6 weeks of pregnancy. They also had an older law that went into effect. The legislature is likely to return to session in the summer to consider passing an outright ban. Arizona, the state enacted an abortion ban after 15 weeks with no exceptions to rape or incest, which takes effect in September. Arizona has an inactive ban from 1973, but the governor has said the 15-week ban will take precedence. Florida, the state enacted an abortion ban after 15 weeks of pregnancy, which will go into effect on July 1st, so the day I'm recording this. The state's high court recognized the right to an abortion in its constitution 3 decades ago, but the court has become more conservative, with 3 of the 7 judges appointed by the Republican governor. Georgia, the state enacted a ban on abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, but a court blocked it The state filed an appeal, and a court stayed the case pending the Supreme Court's decision on Dobbs. All right. Now, these states are uncertain. They can go either way. I think they're waiting on how many states are going to go which way, and the elections. So, Indiana, the governor will call a special session of the state legislature in July, and legislators may consider new laws restricting abortion. A majority of lawmakers had asked him to do so once Roe was overturned, and he decided not to once Roe was overturned. So that'll happen sometime early in July. Iowa, in June, the state's high court overruled a 2018 decision that said the right to an abortion was protected under the state constitution. The state previously enacted a ban on abortion after 6 weeks, which was permanently blocked by a judge, but abortion opponents are likely to seek enforcement. Kansas, the state's high court ruled that a pregnant woman's right to personal autonomy is protected in its constitution. Kansas will decide in August whether its constitution should be amended to say it contains no right to abortion. Michigan, the state has a law from before Roe that would ban nearly all abortions, but it has been blocked in a state court. The Democratic governor and attorney general have also said they will not enforce the ban. Montana, the state has a ban after 20 weeks of pregnancy, which is not in effect, but abortion opponents are likely to seek its enforcement. The state's high court ruled that its constitution protects the right to an abortion. Nebraska. A bill to enact the trigger ban failed in the legislature this year. The governor is expected to call a special session to pass a total ban on abortion. North Carolina. The state has an abortion ban enacted before Roe, but it was modified in 1973 to bar the procedure after 20 weeks of pregnancy. The 20-week ban is not in effect, but abortion opponents may seek its enforcement. Pennsylvania. Abortion is not protected by state law. Republicans currently control the state legislature, but the current Democratic government has vetoed anti-abortion restrictions. Virginia. Abortion will most likely stay accessible, though it is not expressly protected by state law. Split control of the state legislature may prevent significant changes until the next election in 2023. These states are where abortion is likely to stay protected. Alaska, the state's high court recognized the right to reproductive choice under its constitution. Colorado, state laws protect abortion. Same goes for Maine and Rhode Island. Massachusetts, the state's high court has recognized the right to abortion under its constitution. Recently enacted laws to protect abortion and expand access. So that's basically they're going to expand access to people that are in states that have full bans. Minnesota, the state's high court has recognized it under their constitution. Nevada, state law protects abortion. The law was affirmed by voters that can only be changed by a voter referendum, which I don't think that would happen in Nevada. I think Nevada is a blue state, but I'm not 100% sure. New Hampshire, abortion will most likely stay accessible, though it is not expressly protected by state law. The state repealed a pre-Roe ban on abortion in 1997. New Mexico, abortion will most likely stay accessible, though it is not expressly protected by state law. State courts have not determined whether New Mexico's constitution protects abortion rights. California, which this one was one of the first states to protect doctors and people that were coming across state lines, but state laws protect abortion, and the government signed a bill to shield abortion providers from out-of-state bans. Voters will decide in November whether to adopt an amendment to protect abortion rights. Connecticut, state laws protect abortion. A new law expands access to providers and shields both providers and patients from out-of-state lawsuits. Washington, D.C., local laws protect abortion through pregnancy. The city plans to bolster protection, though Congress ultimately oversees the city's laws. So There we go with that one. Delaware state laws protect abortion, and a new law expands access to providers. Same thing goes for Hawaii. Same thing goes to Maryland, but Maryland also covers insurance coverage as well. New Jersey state law protects abortion throughout pregnancy, so throughout the whole pregnancy. And the governor has proposed making the state a sanctuary for those seeking the procedure. Good job, New Jersey. New York state laws protect abortion. Legislators have proposed other protections, including an amendment to the state constitution. Oregon state laws protect abortion through pregnancy, and legislature approved a $15 million to support those seeking the procedure. Vermont state laws protect abortion throughout pregnancy. In November, voters will decide if the state constitution should include abortion protection. Washington, the state laws protect abortion, and recent laws expand it to providers. So with Roe being reversed, like it has been, it sets women's rights back, and equality back by 50 years. Whether you're pro-life or you're pro-choice, the choice is no longer yours in some states. And in some of those states, if you leave to go get it done, they will prosecute you. Some states, they will prosecute you and the doctor that does the procedure. What this also opens the door up for is for people to go to less credible places and places that don't have the most sterile equipment to get this procedure done. This in turn is going to lead to a lot of complications, and then it could even turn into death for some women. But that's what they're being driven to by the Supreme Court overturning this. It's something that's bad, and it's going to turn bad, because them doing this and states banning abortion, it doesn't stop abortion. It just makes it harder for women to get it done. It makes women either go out of state and then face prosecution by their state, or it makes women go to less credible places. You're not going to a hospital to do this. Which then, if something goes wrong there and you have to go to the hospital and then somebody rats you out, you're in trouble anyway. So it doesn't stop it. They need to do something. The government needs to do something. Congress needs to do something to codify this. So as of 2019, legal abortions look like this. 33% are by white women, 38% by black women, 21% by Hispanic, 7% by other. 14.5% of women were not married, 85.5% were married. So there's some figures for you. This also leads into some conspiracy theories that are going around, which I think they have a little bit of justification to them, if you want to say. Where one of them that I was reading, and this is the one I kind of see where they're going with it. They was saying that the majority of people in the U.S. in 2025 is no longer going to be Caucasian. The majority is going to be, I think it was Hispanic, then black, and then Caucasian. Which, by the way, if you didn't know this, if you've been living under a rock your whole life, unless you're Native American, Indian, whatever you want to call them, unless you're Native American, you are an immigrant, or your ancestors are immigrants. They were not born here. Y'all came from overseas. Y'all came from Mexico, Canada, England, Germany, wherever. Your ancestors came from somewhere on a boat to get here. They were not born here unless they're Native American, like I said. So, calm your horses. But, so the conspiracy was that the reason these abortions are going through is because the abortion rates with white women are so high, and they're only getting higher, that Republicans are afraid that they're no longer going, the Caucasian is no longer going to be the dominant majority of what's in the US. And they're trying to force babies on women so that way that doesn't change. Well, that doesn't matter. Because, like I said, everybody's from somewhere unless you're Native American. Even the founding fathers weren't from here. Granted, they started this, but they were stealing land from Native Americans. So, get over yourself. All right, so on June 24th, after the decision for Roe being overturned, Joe Biden came out and said, "It is a sad day for the court and for the country. 50 years ago, Roe v. Wade was decided, and it has been law of the land since. This landmark case protected women's rights to choose her right to make an intensely personal decision with her doctor, free from interference from politics. It reaffirmed basic principles of equality, that women have the power to control their own destiny, and it reinforced a fundamental right to privacy. The right each of us to choose how to live our lives. Now with Roe gone, let's be clear, the health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. Make no mistake, the decision is the culmination of a deliberate effort over decades to upset the balance of law. The court's decision to do so will have real immediate consequences. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women, some without exceptions. So extreme that women could be pushed to protecting their health, or could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls are forced to bear their rapist's child. So extreme that doctors will be criminalized for fulfilling their duty to care." I don't agree with Joe Biden with a lot of things. That I agree with. Like, you took away women's rights. But yeah, he is 100% right. So imagine you're a person that lives in Texas. You have a family member, whether it's your wife, a child, you're a man, you're a female, whatever. Imagine somebody close to you that's a female goes out shopping and they're enjoying a carefree day, minding their own business, and some sadic, low-life asshole grabs them, beats them, and sexually abuses them. Then that same girl finds out that she's pregnant. But because you live in Texas, you can't get an abortion, even if it's rape. Or say a family member rapes you. You can't get an abortion because it's incest. Texas wants you to live with that child. To give you the constant reminder that your child, whether it's your firstborn, thirdborn, whatever, your child was a product of rape. Because you're not allowed to get an abortion. And you can't go out of Texas to go get an abortion. Because Texas also passed a law to prosecute her if she tries to go out of state. Now, there are some states that will protect you against that, but if you go back to Texas, they can just go ahead and prosecute you for it. And this is all because the Supreme Court and your state officials are only looking out for themselves. They're not looking out for you and me. They're looking out for themselves and their opinion. They don't care about us. They don't, Republicans, Democrats, they don't care about the people. They care about their agenda. So now, because of them, your daughter has to live with the constant reminder that one of her children, her first child, or one of her many children, is a product of rape, not of love. How would you feel about this? Personally, I know I'd be pissed off. And I would do anything to help them out. If it was someone related to me, someone, my child, whatever, I would help them out so that they don't have to live with that constant reminder. because that's not something they should have to live with. Now, same day, Vice President Kamala Harris says that this opinion also says, when you read it, that abortion is not deeply rooted in our nation's history. They, the Supreme Court, offer that in their opinion as a foundation for the decision they rendered today in holding that it is not deeply rooted in our history. Today's decision on that theory then calls into question other rights that we thought were settled, such as the right to birth control, the right to same-sex marriage, and the right to interracial marriage, which Clarence Thomas also mentions same-sex sex. The great aspiration of our nation has been to expand freedom, but the expansion of freedom clearly is not inevitable. It is not something that just happens, not unless we defend our most fundamental principles. That statement is powerful. Go listen to this whole thing. I'll try to find the video again and I'll link it down in my bio. The reason I picked this portion of that is because she talks about Griswold versus Connecticut, which is about contraception. So basically, if abortion's getting banned and they ban contraception, there's no way for you to go and get like a plan B and take it before anything happens. Like if you go have sex, you've got to deal with, hey, I have to have this baby now. You can't go get a plan B if they take if they overturn Griswold versus Connecticut. The next one was Obergefell versus Hodge, which is same-sex marriage. They also talked about she's talking about Loving versus Virginia, which is interracial marriage, which I know a lot of people in two of those categories. These cases could be next up in the Supreme Court to be seen. These, unfortunately, could be overturned as well because the far-right thinking Supreme Court does not care about how we evolve. They do not care about how we evolve and we progress. And they don't care about how these cases have expanded freedom like the vice president talks about. Reversing these would take us back years and years. America would no longer be the land of the free. Reversing these cases would take away that freedom that we all enjoy. All of this because of out-of-touch Supreme Court justices that are looking out for their own best interests and not for the interests of their people. They're not looking out for us, like I said. And they should be. So next up would be Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. She's a Democrat from New York. Same day, she goes on to say and individuals who claim to protect the lives of children just weeks after a dozen children in Texas died, now claim to support their life. Every single one of us has woken up today with less rights than we had yesterday. With so many individuals out there, I think it's important for us to tackle this myth that this is somehow about babies or children or life, because the same individuals who claim to be protecting life fight against universal health care. Do they believe in universal child care? Do they believe in life after birth? From their policy positions, I assure you the evidence is lacking. She continues on. Who are we protecting? Who does this protect? No one. Overturning Roe puts every single one of us in danger. And what I think many of our colleagues perhaps haven't quite, or perhaps they have fully understood, is that this also undermines the right to privacy in the United States of America. But we are here to solve this issue. Our job is to develop a path forward, and in that, we know that this House has passed and is willing to codify Roe. But what we also need is answers from our colleagues in the United States Senate. So to those senators who voted for these justices under the claim and the guise that this would not happen, this decision falls on them. What will they do as they are lied to? What will they do as a consequence of this decision? Whether that be a Republican or a Democrat, but we cannot allow this to go unanswered. We are talking about a court with the majority of justices appointed by a party that has not won a popular presidential election in more than 30 years, ruling against the majority of Americans. We will not stop fighting until this is fixed. And I say that to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. We're not going away. We stay, we fight, we push, and we will not be silenced. So when she talks about codifying Roe, so basically Joe Biden has put codifying Roe directly on the shoulders of Mitch McConnell and the other Republican Senate leader. So basically what's going on is in the House of Representatives, there's something in there for codifying Roe and passing it into law. But the Republicans are holding a filibuster, and basically a filibuster is they're given any amount of time. It's an infinite amount of time to just talk. And they don't have to do anything. They can't be pressed for it. They can just talk and talk and talk and talk until it just dies off. But Republicans are holding Roe hostage and not allowing it to be codified, which basically what would happen is as soon as it passes, they know as soon as it passes the House, it's going to pass the Senate because the two Senate Republican leaders also don't agree that Roe should have been overturned, which then in turn, because it's a 50-50 split in the Senate, 50 Democrats would basically vote to codify Roe, and then the two senators that are Republicans would vote to codify it too, and Roe would be codified back into law. Here's the problem. President Biden also said that he's asking for them to dissolve the filibuster, which Mitch McConnell is not going to do. Because if you do that, then when it comes to other things that happen, you're not able to just stretch it out until it just dies. So he's put it on the Republicans to do something and get this done. Whether that happens or not, we don't know. It's going to be yet to be seen. But if it does get to the Senate, it should pass. It should codify. We just have to wait for it. So next up, I had seen a video with Dr. Allison Gilbert, which was really powerful. I really liked. She is a Texas abortion doctor. She spoke with USA Today. Here's what she said. Some of the patients I've seen since September 1st that I've had to turn away personally. A patient who was diagnosed with a lethal fetal anomaly, who was forced to carry that pregnancy until its own demise. A patient who was in a violent relationship with her partner, realized that she was pregnant. She was eligible for having an abortion under the restrictive CB-8, but needed more time to decide whether or not she actually wanted to have that abortion. A 15-year-old who was the daughter of an undocumented immigrant who had been raped by a family member, was ineligible because of Texas law, and her mother couldn't travel out of state to obtain that care. Those are very few examples of thousands of women and people who are pregnant right now, who I have personally had to turn away, that we all have had to turn away during this time. This is no longer going to be a Texas issue. We're no longer going to be able to see 50% of the patients. It's going to be 0% of the patients. Nobody's ready for that. But we are going to keep fighting. We're going to do everything we can up until the minute that someone tells us we can't. And if we aren't able to provide abortion services directly to the patients in Texas, we will help them get the care in other states. So this is definitely a powerful statement, because you got doctors that are willing to do whatever it takes to help these parents out, or to help these mothers out, help women out. And this is what it's going to come down to. In certain states, doctors are going to see the decrease in patients because of this. But in order to keep people safe, we are going to need to see some doctors really want to help. Make sure these people get the help they need. This way, people are not trying to get these types of procedures at shady and risky places. Like I said before, you're going to see a lot of people going to risky places, to non-medical places, to try to get these abortions. So right now, and if that happens, we're going to see a lot more, unfortunately, deaths because of abortions gone wrong, or abortions, you're not taking care of the abortion correctly. You're just going to see an uptick, and that's sad, and that should not happen. So right now, currently in the Supreme Court, it consists of 9 justices, 6 of whom are men, 3 of whom are women, all of the men born before the 70s, all of the women before 75. I ask, why are these out of touch people here telling women what to do with their bodies? Better yet, why are they the ones who deciding what women should do with their bodies? Why are these people allowed to sit on the Supreme Court as long as they want? These people have lifetime memberships on the Supreme Court until they retire. Why are they allowed to sit that long, but the president only gets 2 terms? Same thing goes with Congress. As long as you keep getting voted in, you're there for your lifetime. All of these positions should have term limits, and they all should coincide with the president. You get 2 terms, 4 years apiece. It should not be any longer than that. You should not be able to sit and hold a seat hostage in any government position. So these 9 people sit in those chairs in the Supreme Court, and I can't remember her name, but the new justice that just got appointed, I can't wait to see what she does. The problem is, she's replacing one of the 3 that voted against overturning Roe. So you're not adding a justice to replace someone that voted in favor of overturning Roe. You're replacing somebody that voted against it. But these people that are sitting in there right now abide to the T of the Constitution. This Constitution was written, remember, September 17th, 1787, and it was ratified in 1788. The U.S. was only 9 states when this happened. The men that wrote it and signed it were slave owners. James Madison, the person who is known as the father of the Constitution, was your garden variety slave owner. He was just an average slave owner. These people did not agree with equality. These people had slaves. These people were holding anybody of color down. They were holding women down. Remember, women didn't have rights back then. If you were a woman, you're supposed to be childbearing and living in your kitchen and cleaning the house. You didn't have a right as a woman. If you were colored, you were more than likely a slave. So, and I mean, this kind of sounds familiar, where you've got a bunch of old people who don't believe in equality, who don't believe in liberty. These are the same 9. The people I'm talking about are the people that we have in the Supreme Court. They don't believe in equality. They might not have slaves, but they definitely don't agree in equality. They don't want us to be equal. They want to hold down whoever they can. And this decision for Roe v. Wade just shows that. By taking women's rights away, they show that. So next thing I want to go over, Saturday night there was a pro-choice activist protest at the Arizona State Capitol building. These people were tear gassed, and a couple of news outlets, one being the Mirror, picked up on this, and they depicted these protesters as violent and breaking in and breaching that Capitol building, which was not the case. So the title of it reads "Pro-Choice Activists Attack Capitol Building and Breach. Then they are tear gassed." And that was a title by Mirror News reporter Adam May. So this was a very poor written article from when I was reading it, and it was very poor journalism by Adam May. So these people, when you watch the video of this, no one breached the Capitol building. These pro-activists were in protest at the Arizona Capitol building, and not one person went inside. They were outside the building, protesting. They were banging on doors. They were banging on glass. The people inside the building felt like they were being hostage, even though they felt like they were being held hostage, but they definitely weren't. They could have left, and then no one was harmed. But these people inside the building called the SWAT team, who then moved in quickly to try to move the crowds. And then that's when the crowd started banging on the windows and the glass. As soon as they started that, the officers fired rounds of tear gas into the protesters when many started banging on the glass. These people were protesting outside and banging on the doors. No one breached the Capitol. No one broke any windows or doors. And no one was inside besides lawmakers. So I ask, how is this acceptable? The people who stormed the Capitol in Washington, D.C., after Trump, the president of the United States, told them to. And remind you, in the June 6th or January 6th trial that's going on right now with him, that man got into an SUV and choked one of his Secret Service because they said it's not a good idea to go to the Capitol. But he instructed people to go there and storm the Capitol and break into it. They weren't tear gassed. Now, you watch some of the videos, some of the police there were waving them right in. But those people went right into the Capitol and were in private rooms without permission. They were not tear gassed. But these people in Arizona were. What's the difference? What is the difference? What is the justification for that? We, as Americans, have a right to protest. That is what makes a democracy. But by putting a stop to a nonviolent protest, these people had their First Amendment right violated. The right to freedom of assembly, violated. The right to freedom of association, violated. And the right to freedom of speech, all violated. So please explain to me how a nonviolent protest like this was met with tear gas. Now, here's where I'm going to get a little more serious about this. Because right now, it's not a time to be hugging each other and remembering the times when we had abortion protection in this country. Right now is the time where we should all be pissed the fuck off. This is a time we should be aggravated, pissed off, and scared to death. We should also be motivated to do something about this. I know for me personally, I am never going to vote any candidate, no matter where they are running for. I vow to never vote someone who's in favor of last Friday's Supreme Court decision. If they even show the slightest favorability towards that decision or that ruling, you've lost me. I implore everyone that can hear my voice, whether you're watching me, you're listening to me on podcasts, I implore you, do not vote for somebody like that. If you're voting for somebody like that, you're voting against women's rights and women's equality. Plain and simple put. If you're voting for somebody that's anti-abortion, you're anti-female. You're anti-women. Take that how you want. Give me a thumbs down on this video. I don't give a fuck. But those of you that feel the same way, I implore you to go vote. Go get registered to vote. Tell your friends to go vote, especially if they feel the same way. Get registered to vote. Let's get better politicians in the government that we live in, the local government. Let's get better politicians in the House, in the Senate. Let's make sure stuff like this doesn't happen. Let's make sure stuff like Obergefell, Loving, let's make sure all of those things don't get overturned. Like I said, if you know anybody that feels the same way as I do, make sure they get registered to vote. Talk to them about voting. This way we can make a change in the country, and a change that needs to happen. I mean, honestly, if you're not pissed off right now by this decision, you're part of the problem. 100%. No sugarcoating that shit. If you're not pissed off about what's going on and the decision that was made on June 24th, 2022, you are part of the problem. And look, if the Constitution was being upheld, then the Supreme Court would have never taken away women's rights. That's what happened. You think, well, abortion isn't in the Constitution. I mean, you would be right, but there's also a lot of things that aren't in the Constitution too. Like, when we misinterpret the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, bearing arms means anything. Remember, those people that wrote this had muskets, they had knives, they had rocks, they had wood. They didn't have fully automatic weapons like AR-15s. Remember that. So when you go to say something like this, where abortion isn't in the Constitution, remember, AR-15s aren't in the Constitution too, but you have a right, well, you think you have a right to own one. Everybody that has killed children with an AR-15, they think they have a right to own that. So why shouldn't women have a right for abortion if they want to? What's the difference here? Because you know what? One thing that's said in the Constitution is liberty. And that's one thing the Supreme Court took away from women. The Supreme Court took away women's liberty. Now here's a preamble to the Constitution. I'm going to read it to you. It says, we the people, and this is the beginning of it too. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity remember that. Secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity. By the Supreme Court overturning Roe, you took away the blessings of liberty to ourselves. You took away the blessings of liberty to women. So when you say abortion isn't in the Constitution, well, liberty is. And that was taken away. They took away women's rights and women's liberty and set them back 50 years. They literally told women, go back in the kitchen and have babies. That's it. That's what the Supreme Court said. That's what states are saying right now. So, like I said before, I implore you, if you feel the same way as me, go vote. When the midterm elections come up, when presidential elections come up, go vote. Change who's sitting in the White House. Change who's sitting in Congress. Because remember, when Biden was in Congress, he voted to overturn Roe. Don't forget that. Go look that up. It's common knowledge. Biden voted to overturn Roe. And now he's fighting to codify it. So people change. But remember, anybody in Congress is going to lie to you so that next time they come up for election, you're going to vote for them. That's all it's about. You're going to vote for them. And they're going to lie to you so that you do vote for them. And then their whole story changes. Everything changes. As soon as they get into the White House, they're all about themselves. Just remember that. So I'm going to leave you with this. Men should never have any say whatsoever in abortion rights. Men should never have any say in women's rights. Now, if a woman asks a man, if a wife asks her husband about abortion, totally different story. But if that's not happening, no man, no woman should ever tell someone who is pregnant what they should do with their body. No one has that right, except for the woman that's going through it. Everybody else just needs to shut the fuck up. But guys, leave your comments below, and I'll leave a heart with them, and I'll respond to it. Leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you're on YouTube for the podcast world. Leave me a rating and a review. Subscribe to the podcast. You guys have a good night, and I'll see you on the next one.